A taxing poem. Poor King George, the bills were mounting fast. Funds had to come from somewhere, and they had to get there fast. He'd spent quite a bit on the French and Indian War, providing defense, a benefit to the colonies across the distant shore. So King George, a monarch and a king, devised a mighty notion, oh, what riches it would bring. He'd call upon Americans to foot his costly bill. So what if they objected? It was King George's will. Then King George a tax he did decree. Now every printed item was subject to a levy. And to each pesky colonist who dared to be contrary, he'd say, I got advantages, it's only temporary. Now King George was taken by surprise. That the people were rebellious he never did surmise. Word would spread like fire all across the nation. We will not pay these taxes without proper representation. So King George, who did not want to fight, thought he'd repeal the tax, but still remain the right to tax every American, the mighty and the small. He'd bide his time, he'd wait a while, and then he'd tax them all. Sly King George, from far across the sea, enacted other taxes on lead and paint and tea. In Boston, angry colonists who did not like this notion rounded up the tea and dumped it in the ocean. Oh, King George felt like an angry dad whose children needed punishment for making him so mad. He closed the port of Boston with a firm and iron fist and hoped to stop the movement that was growing in its midst. Then King George, believing he was right, at Bunker Hill did battle, at Lexington did fight. But the colonists weren't lambs, as previously thought, and stated independence against King George they fought. But King George, seated on his throne, gathered his advisers so he would not feel alone. Prohibit all their armies from taking all my land. The more they fight, said George, the taller I will stand. Old King George, defiant man was he, yet in the end George surrendered to a patriot victory. Each night brings him triumph, yes, at last, or so it seems, for people pay their taxes, if only in his dreams.